Hello there. In this video, I'm planning to talk about the history of Unix and Linux. I recently read a couple of chapters of a book named The Linux Programming Interface, and that inspired me to record this video on the history of Unix and Linux because uh, without these two operating systems and the computing world wouldn't be in the position as it is today. Let's get started. So the development of the Unix operating system. So if when you get to hear the Unix operating system, I'm pretty sure that you do think about that it's an old operating system which started its development way back in the 1960s, most probably. So during the 1960s, in fact, the operating system that AT&T, MIT, and General Electric worked on was called Multics, and it stands for Multiplexed Information Computing Service. However, the project didn't, successfully implement an operating system which could make it a mainstream because they couldn't make a cost effective, lightweight operating system. It was so expensive and it was huge. The machines had to be huge, and it lacked some of the important functionalities they expected they should be having in an operating system at the time. But what stands out was the fact that it really had some good concepts, which is what inspired Ken Thompson, the founder of Unix or father of Unix, to develop Unix. And it inspired him, and he brought some concepts from Multics to Unix, and he developed a Unix operating system back in 1969. So he drew some ideas from Multics as well. And he used a machine called PDP-7. And I haven't seen this machine. And if you have seen this machine in your naked eyes, you're lucky. At least in a computing historical perspective, it's a privilege to see such an old machine, and a pioneering machine in the computing world. Unix was initially written in assembly language at the time, and Ken Thompson also worked on a language called B, which was influenced by BCPL, which was also developed by Ken Thompson. And Ken Thompson's idea to develop B was to develop Unix. He developed B to develop Unix, but again, it was little cryptic and it lacked some functionalities. Again, what an operating system developer wanted in a high level programming language. And that's when Dennis Ritchie came up with the C programming language, which drew ideas from both BCPL and B. And so he developed this thing in 1972, and it was a huge success. It's because it was efficient, powerful, and modular. And Unix was then implemented using C in 1973 by both Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie on a PDP-11 machine later on. And C, for example, if you really look at it, has been the number one language for a very, very long time. And it still dominates certain low-level system programming tasks. If you have to write an operating system today, most probably you will use C or its derived languages for that purpose. If you write a compiler, kernel driver, and whatnot, you will be choosing C even today after so many years being in the computing world. So that's the power of C. It's a very lightweight language, very small language. So to see the pioneers, so in this domain, so you see Ken Thompson on the left and Dennis Ritchie on the right, if you haven't seen them. So this is PDP-7 machine. I just grabbed this thing in a forum somewhere, and this is the machine that I've seen in books as well. So PDP-11 is this. So this is the Unix programming language which was implemented on C, was done on this particular machine, and so forth. Okay, so to quickly look at the timeline of Unix, and this is up to 1975. So 1960s saw Multics, and 1969 Ken Thompson developed Unix, and in 1971 they had what they called as the first edition of the Unix operating system, and it already had some of the tools that you even see today, such as the chmod, the find tool, and so forth, and a remove method for file systems and so forth. It also had this compiler called Fortran compiler. Fortran is another programming language that was popular back then. So it shipped a compiler for that language as well at that time. So 1972, that's when, during 1970s and 72s, C programming language was developed by Dennis Ritchie, and he was developing it at that time. So 1972 became the official year when the C programming language was incepted. And by that time, Unix already had the second edition, and it's been at that time itself been installed in 10 different machines, most probably at AT&T Bell Laboratories. And during 1973, and that's when the third edition of the Unix operating system came out, and it included the C compiler and the concept called pipes, which is still predominantly used in the Unix and Linux operating systems, as you may know. And during 1970, that's when the fourth edition also came out, and almost the entire Unix operating system is by then implemented in the C programming language. The fifth edition came in 1974, and Unix by that time was being installed in 50 different machines in various different places and so forth. 1975 saw the sixth edition, and it was widely used even outside of AT&T as well, and in different universities and so forth on PDP-11. So this is again Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie working on the operating system, and they're doing some work on that. So let's look at the development of Unix. And so AT&T, even though they developed the Unix operating system, they did not have the legal rights to sell it. So even this is approximately at during 1975. This was mainly due to the fact that AT&T and government had a mutual understanding that some agreements were in place, and that prevented AT&T to sell Unix operating system because of the monopoly they had on telephone business. And however, AT&T licensed the Unix operating system for universities with the source code. Certain universities, that's a very crucial step in the computing history, in my opinion, because that's what made the source code visible to various different people to explore more things, and that's where more ideas came in, as you would see in the next couple of slides when I talk about BSD and so forth. And so 500 or so machines were running Unix by 1977 in the United States as well as in other countries. And then during 1979, they saw the release of the version 7, and that was by far the best solution, a best release of the Unix operating system. It included some of the very popular programs and tools that you even see today, like the awk tool, awk programming language, stream editor, sed, make for uh, compiling programs and so forth, right? And it also had Bourne shell, which you know made the birth of shell programming concept, and also the Fortran 77 compiler. And a lot of pioneering people got involved in the Unix operating system because it had such an impact in the computing industry. So during 1975-76 period, Ken Thompson spent some time as a visiting lecturer at the University of California at Berkeley, where he also studied. So he wanted to go do some lecturing there, and he made a lot of advancements with students at Berkeley at that time. So some of the advancements that came in at that time was C shell. Now Bourne shell was already there. Then C shell came into existence. If you have heard of this VI editor, I'm pretty sure that you have, and it's still used today, and it was developed during that time. And SendMail, it's another program, and the Pascal compiler, and they also brought in some concepts called this virtual memory management on digital VAX architecture at that time. And some of these concepts are still used, and obviously it has advanced a lot, but it is still there in various different operating systems in some form. And these pioneering efforts are very much worth it for mentioning in any form, in my opinion. So, and then BSD was born because Ken Thompson was at Berkeley. So BSD stands for Berkeley Software Distribution, and it was born in 1979. So they had this 3BSD first full distribution. It was called 3BSD, and they had BSD and 2BSD were just a set of tools because they added more tools, as I mentioned previously. So those were the parts of BSD and 2BSD, and it became a proper distribution with 3BSD. And Computer Systems Research Group at Berkeley released version 4, and 4.2 BSD came in at during 1983, and it included a complete TCP/IP implementation. If you have heard of Berkeley sockets and TCP/IP related stuff, and that's the birth of network programming, and the rest is a history, And 4.1 BSD was widely used in universities as well, and so this BSD flavor actually formed the basis for various other operating systems like Sun OS and Sun Microsystems, which later also invented Java, had an operating system based on BSD, which was called Sun OS as well. And and then during some time during 1980s, and there were breakups at AT&T, and some departments or some sort of organizational restructure happened at AT&T, which and it was due to US antitrust legislation in 1982. But the process began much earlier than that, and then that made AT&T to market Unix, and they because they no longer held the monopoly which was keeping them or holding them to sell a Unix operating system. So they also went ahead and released System 3 during 1981, and it was done by the AT&T's Unix Support Group, USG. And System 5 was released back in 1983, and this was also during the BSD 4.1, 4.2 time. And System 5 Release 4 finally came in during 1989, and that was one of the very popular operating systems back then. And so System 5 Release 4 already incorporated many of BSD's features, notably the networking functionalities as well, like those TCP/IP functionalities as well, because those were very crucial and found to be very important for the modernization of computers and applications, so they incorporated that, and they licensed to many commercial vendors to use it as the base for their Unix implementation. Some of the implementations you can see here: the BSD, of course, and System 5, and Sun OS, uh, Digital Ultrix, OSF, IBM's AIX, HP's HPUX, and Nexus, Next Step. I think, as I remember, this is Steve Jobs' company, Nex, and AUX for Apple Macintosh. And Microsoft also had a Unix-based operating system called SCORE's Xenix, and that was surprising, but it has been there, so some history around that as well. So let's look a little bit closely on BSD. So BSD initially had a lot of original code from AT&T's Unix, which made BSD, which helped BSD to be they couldn't sell as well. They couldn't sell because of AT&T's code, so they had to remove some of the code, and there had been some legal issues between the entities as well in the past. And I recommend you to read some of these historical aspects if you're interested. Of course, using some of those books like Linux Programming Interface, Advanced Programming in the Unix Environment by Richard Stevens and so forth. You can read those books, which has many details about the history. So the BSD over time removed those code and rewrote it in their own form. And they also had something called 386 BSD for x86-32 by Bill and Lynn Jolitz, based on BSD Net 2 release in 1992. So they had another release called BSD Net 2, and that's what made the pave the way for 386 BSD. So these are all historical reasons, and there are aspects which has driven for these releases and so forth. So Berkeley Software Design Incorporated, BSDI, it's another entity, began distributing commercially supported BSD OS based on Net2 and 386 BSD. So and commercial possibility arose by then, because they had by far removed all of the AT&T's specific code, and they have rewritten in some other form, which made paved the way for them to sell or commercially sell BSD Unix operating system. Berkeley Software, the other aspect is the Unix System Laboratories. There was another entity, which was a subsidiary of AT&T that set out to develop Unix. So they filed a lawsuit against BSDI, and now see, this is the legal issue that I was talking about. So Unix System Laboratories also tried to sue University of California, where Berkeley software distribution was developed, but the claims were dismissed at that time. And later, there was a company called Novell. They acquired Unix System Laboratories as well. So University of California filed against. So this was going back and forth. So it was, once USL filed a lawsuit against University of California, and after it was dismissed, University of California filed against USL, citing USL had not given credit to BSD in System 5, which later ended up in a settlement in 1994. So, I previously mentioned that during 1989, System 5 Release 4 came in, and they probably took some code from BSD as well. So they haven't given the credit for the work that BSD folks had done. So it was going back and forth at that time. So, and they reached a settlement in 1994. So BSD had to remove 3 out of 18,000 files and modify a few and add copyright notices to some. So the resultant was called 4.4 BSD, and in various different literature you'd have come across this particular term 4.4 BSD, and that's the modified version. Some of the proprietary or the AT&T specific codes were removed, and some copyright notices were some were modified, and that resulted in 4.4 BSD. And then BSD also saw various different flavors, like NetBSD, which was made for the portability in various variety of hardware. And then it saw another release called the FreeBSD, and its focus was on performance, and it was very popular even today to some extent. And there was another thing called OpenBSD. It was a fork of NetBSD, and it was focusing on security aspects of various applications, and also the kernel and all that, right? And Dragonfly BSD, a split from FreeBSD 4.x, focusing on symmetric multiprocessing architecture and so forth. So there are various historical reasons for these splits and new emergence of distributions and so forth. So for further details you can refer to the literature as well. So then finally we are going to talk about the GNU project or GNU project. And so this also, why I'm talking about this in the history of Unix and Linux, is because without GNU a lot of things wouldn't be as today that you are experiencing, right? So GNU project, it was founded by Richard Stallman, and he was determined to create a Unix-like operating system at that time, because he wanted to see the source code, because AT&T's source code was not that open. It was not open source as in today's form, as in GNU's form. It was not free for people to modify and so forth. And he founded the GNU project with the vision of making free software. So GNU stands for, it has a recursive acronym. GNU stands for GNU is not Unix. So a recursive acronym. And so he wanted to make an operating system and an ecosystem around that with free software, where the free in free speech point of view, and not free cost point of view in terms of the word free. And in 1985 he founded Free Software Foundation, and BSD was not free in the way Stallman meant BSD, as well as AT&T's System 5 Release 4, all that, right? So the GNU General Public License, you still see this license being used in various different applications, GPL licensed. And it's the first version of GPL license appeared in 1989, the second version was in 1991, and the current and the third version was incorporated in 2007. So GNU project created many useful applications, and some of the very popular ones that you even use today. The Emacs editor, GCC compiler. Initially it was called GNU C compiler, but now it's called GNU compiler collection, because it has compilers and tools for various different programming languages, including Go, Java, and so forth, C++, you name it. And so they also brought in Bash shell, C library. It's GNU C library is called glibc, and GNU project started a GNU herd kernel project, but they never succeeded in that. And by 1990 it was still very incomplete. And when I say 1991, you must now remember the Linux kernel as well, which appeared in 1991. Right, so the Linux kernel appeared. So Linus Torvalds set out to improve Minix. The Minix was an operating system developed by Andrew S. Tannenbaum for academic purposes. So Andrew S. Tannenbaum, if you have been in academic side doing computer science or something, you would have read Andrew S. Tannenbaum's books like The Modern Operating System, the computer networks and so forth. Is a very good author and very good, very talented professor, well sorted out professor for various PhD students to, be a mentor and so forth. So he had this Unix operating system, and its source code was available. It was even available in the book as well. So Linus Torvald took that thing and he improved it to create Linux operating system. And Linus Torvald thought of improving it and take advantage of 386 processor, which was at that time very advanced, which Minix didn't have at that time. So this blurb that you see here is something that he wrote out in a forum somewhere announcing Linux. So let's read that. So it read out something like, "Do you pine for nice days of Minix 1.1 when men were men and wrote their own device drivers? Are you without a nice project and just dying to cut your teeth on a OS you can try to modify for your needs? Are you finding it frustrating when everything works on Minix? No more all-nighters to get a Niffy program working? Then this post might be just for you. As I mentioned a month ago, I'm working on a free version of a Minix like for 386 computer. It has finally reached the stage where it's even usable, though may not be depending on what you want, and I'm willing to put out the source for wider distribution. It is just version 0.02, but I have successfully run bash, gcc, gnu make, gnu sed, compress, etc. under it. Great story. So now you see these two great men, Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds, on this, and which made pave the way for various Linux distributions and what Linux is today. So you find these Linux distributions today like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Fedora, Debian, Ubuntu, Arch Linux, Mint, OpenSUSE, and Alpine Linux, and so forth. And there are many more actually. So I personally use Fedora and Ubuntu a lot, and I'm sure that you might be using some of these as well. And this actually brings to the end of my presentation as well on the history of Unix and Linux, and I hope you learned something very useful. And I enjoyed reading these historical literature, and also enjoyed recording this video as well, which I have been wanting to do for some time. And I hope to also record a video on the Unix standardization process and what has been the history on that. And stay tuned for that. And please subscribe for my channel.